On a number of occasions on this channel, we've explained a variety of ways in which younger people seem to have had it worse than older generations. One of the lesser discussed issues though is the driving test crisis, which sees younger people waiting almost 6 months to secure a driving test. For many, especially those who live in rural communities, having to wait half a year to get a driving license just makes life that bit more difficult, making it harder to meet up with friends and limiting opportunities for work. Clearly, considering this began during the COVID-19 pandemic, which started more than half a decade ago, the fact that this remains a problem shows that something has gone terribly wrong. So in this video, we're going to take a look into the crisis, how bad it really is, and how the government could go about fixing it. Want to feel more inside of politics? If so, check out our new range of posters, which take you inside Westminster and the Capitol building, or our map of Brussels, which shows the true geographic scale of the EU. Let's start by explaining how driving tests in the UK actually work. Essentially, in order to legally drive a car on UK roads, citizens need to pass 2 tests, the theory test and the practical test. The theory test is a computer-based test that takes place at a specifically designed test centre, and the practical test is the test of someone's actual driving abilities, conducted by a driving examiner. Prior to 2020, the number of both kinds of tests remained relatively stable year by year, at around 2 million car theory tests conducted each year, and around 1.6 million practical tests. But during the first and second lockdowns of the COVID-19 pandemic, all tests, both theory and practical, were cancelled due to public health concerns, creating a backlog of 1.1 million untaken tests, which won't be fully cleared until November 2027. Fortunately, the theory tests bounced back pretty quickly after the pandemic. In fact, in the years since, the number of theory tests conducted has actually increased by around 200,000 a quarter, which is useful, considering that during the pandemic itself, there was a 52.2% decrease in theory tests versus the previous year. What this means is that according to the most recent estimates by the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, the executive agency in charge of managing driving tests, between 2024 and 2025, people waited an average of only 3.3 weeks for a theory test, comfortably below the 4-week target. However, this was not the same for the practical driving tests. The pandemic caused significantly more disruption to these kinds of tests, with a 72.7% decrease in the number of practical tests in the pandemic year versus the prior year. This is mainly due to the fact that when tests were allowed again between lockdowns 1 and 2, only around 200,000 were conducted per quarter, half the normal rate. And while in the years since the pandemic, the number of tests administered has returned to normal, they haven't increased to make up for this shortfall. Considering that the backlog in 2020-21 stood at 1.1 million, this just hasn't been enough to clear it. Even now, 5 years on from the pandemic, the backlog is estimated to be 360,000. As a result of this, the DVSA has shown that on average people are waiting 21.9 weeks for a practical driving test, an increase from the 16.1 week average in 2023-24, and significantly above the 7-week target. So why has the number of theory tests been able to increase to meet demand, while practical tests just haven't? Well, it's likely due to the nature of the tests themselves. Practical tests require a physical driving examiner in the car, whereas only a small number of physical employees are required to oversee a big group of people sitting the theory test. It is therefore significantly easier to scale up to meet the new demand for more theory tests than it is for the practical ones. But the issue with practical driving test waiting lists specifically is that it encourages actions, both by driving instructors and learners, that make the waitlist even longer. Driving instructors, aware of the significant backlog, are booking tests as soon as they take on new students, holding on to said bookings and even transferring them to students who are ready to take their practical tests. Under the current rules, this is completely above board, as individuals are able to change the details of their driving test slots up to 6 times without charge, as long as the changes are made 3 days before the time of the actual booking. This would be bad if it was just driving instructors doing it, but there are plenty of reports